the issues dominating the psyche of the public are all issues that lean in Republicans' favor. So when you think about what's setting an environment, there are a lot of people who are very concerned about the border. And Kamala was the border czar, undisputedly. The Biden-Harris administration sued the state of Texas to take down border security measures that they had put up. That is not setting a good environment for Democrats this election. People are legitimately concerned about crime. We've seen, massive numbers of new gun owners who have bought guns for the first time since COVID. That's happening because they're concerned about crime.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We got a special guest today, Steve and Aaron. You do a lot of different stuff, so I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Easiest way to think about me is just a political hack out of D.C., for better or for worse. A lot of people like to hate those folks. I like to think I'm one of the good guys. Exactly.
Yeah.
I do dwell in the swamp, but I come from the swamp of South Carolina, so I know what reality is and try to still live in that. But no, just here doing a lot of work in D.C., trying to, as we talked about, do things like protect conservative principles and the Second Amendment and everything else. And so, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here at the old Tetherball Academy.
Where in South Carolina you're from?
Grew up in Florence.
I grew up in Greenville.
South Carolina?
Yeah. Thereabouts.
Where did you graduate high school?
I graduated at Malden, but I started at Red. We moved, and I went to Malden after that.
So my parents moved from Florence to Greer, so I graduated from Riverside High School.
Oh, yeah. We played you guys quite a bit.
How about that?
Small world. Well, it's not, though. It's a big world.
Indeed.
So, grew up in Florence, and then what'd you go to school afterwards?
Clemson, man. Where'd you go?
I went to Penn State.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What took you up to Penn State?
They had the degree program that I wanted after I got out of the Army.
Gotcha.
I had a couple of degrees already before that, but the main school I went to was Penn State to get a master's degree. Yeah. It was kind of off the beaten path too, which is I didn't want to go to, let's say, like Madison, UW-Madison, where the whole city's built around a university. I think that's more common. Actually, almost every university is a city. It's either in a major city or a city's built around it, and State College is in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Clemson's the same way, man.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah. I didn't mind Clemson. They just didn't have. That's more of like an ag and engineering school, and I was in like Homeland Security style stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what did you study there?
Political science. What else when you end up in D.C.?
What made you decide to do that?
Honestly, I was a page for Thurman on a whim when I was in high school. So for those who aren't familiar, the Senate has a page program for high schoolers where very senior senators can come up to D.C. for a semester. You work inside the Capitol, you live a block away, and it was just an incredible experience. And I was kind of interested in politics at the time, but it was more like, man, this seems like a cool experience. Get out of the house for a semester, go live in D.C., experience politics, work for the most senior notable member of the U.S. Senate. So I just kind of did it on a whim because it sounded fun. And man, the day I left, I said, I'm coming back the day I graduate college. And I almost literally did that. It's been here since 2004.
You said that Thurman was notable. I think notorious might be a better word for that. He was old
Very
as
well
shit.
known, no matter how you want to qualify it.
Well, he was old as shit. He also ran on the segregation ticket in like what election was it? 48, I think, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was.
That which is like that tells you how old that motherfucker is.
So when I worked for him, he was 96 years old. He when he left office in January of 2003, he was 100 years old.
Good God. Yeah, that's crazy.
Democracy, man. It was the will of the people.
Sure. That's why we don't have a direct democracy. And that's why there's only been one direct democracy in the history of human beings in Athens. And they shut that shit down after 2 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So go to school and then you end up in D.C. What's your first job there? Because I worked in politics in Wisconsin for a little while.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, and it
So
was
my,
terrible.
did
Just
you work?
the people were terrible.
Oh yeah, you're literally in the lion's den. It is a nasty business,
Well,
but
it's less of a lion's den, and it's more like I don't know, gay lions maybe. They're all pussies.
yeah,
It's like feisty kittens. They're all like very conniving. Everybody we had working on our messaging team would, as candidates would drop off, they would get added to our team, and they would be working for
yep.
us even when they were working for other people. They're just all ladder climbing pieces of shit. Now there are
That's certainly a
obviously
lot of it for sure.
there's a lot of exceptions. I know I've got a lot of friends that work in politics, but man, most of the people I worked with were awful human beings.
Yeah. So my first job was working on the Senate Committee on Environment and Public Works. I live, breathe, and die to fish. I hunt when I can't fish, and I just wanted to work on the policies of the things that I really cared about. So did that for 3 years, and then moved from there to the National Rifle Association, where I worked there for 8 years, and then since then have just been out doing multi-client consulting, just helping corporations basically mitigate their political risk is what I spend the vast majority of my time doing.
Yeah, it would be an interesting change these days for U.S. Politics to have people who actually do the thing to be on
Exactly,
to
man.
be
What a
on
novel idea.
yeah, to be on the board of whatever group is managing it, so they actually know. Because I think when I think about environment and public works, my mind immediately goes to Washington, Montana, and Colorado, who are doing stupid shit, like reintroducing predator animals while limiting the ability to hunt them and stuff like that, which drives dangerous like bear herds down into cities and shit like that. They're fucking up so much stuff out there. Actually, even the Denver Dispatch, which is, as you might know, a complete leftist rag, last week published an article like, yeah, we should probably not do what you're talking about. There's a big prop in Colorado right now. They're like, yeah, probably vote no on that one because this is fucking stupid.
Yeah, maybe we don't want to ban mountain lion hunting with the amount of people who are moving into Colorado, and as they encroach further and further out into Colorado, going for hikes. Like maybe you don't want to explode that population.
Yeah,
Maybe you should kind of keep that in check.
you would think that would be obvious, but then again, that's an issue, always an issue when you have bureaucrats making decisions where experts should be making decisions, and it's frankly why, in my opinion, nobody trusts so-called experts anymore because the ones that aren't on the take in one way or another are not even experts. You know what I mean? Like what
Right.
explain this to me. You're a DC guy. What is a disinformation expert exactly?
Probably somebody spreading misinformation.
Yeah, what's the resume look like for like well, because when I think of a physics expert, I've got it. There's a couple of things, right? One is an undergraduate degree in some kind of math or physics, and then 2 graduate degrees, one master's degree, and then a PhD in physics specifically, or some offshoot of physics, and then some, in addition to the coursework, some lab work or observational work or something, right? And I'm like, oh, that person's an expert in physics. What exactly do you do to become an expert in disinformation aside from just spreading it?
Well, I have no idea, but here's a very good example from today. Today, I have published an op-ed in the Daily Signal, which is it's a very inside DC paper, but it's talking about how if candidates for office want to accelerate their career, the dynamic has changed. This year, we saw that the public wants unedited, unfiltered information directly from the candidate. And that's why they're going on platforms like podcasts, like we're doing just right now. Uh, but I hedged a part of that op-ed off of a Jeff Bezos op-ed that he wrote. He took a lot of heat for the Washington Post not endorsing in this race, and so he writes an op-ed, and the top of the article says America does not trust news media, and he's right. But what's so funny is he has the banner on the top of Washington Post. It says democracy dies in darkness, basically saying if it's not coming from his paper, it's disinformation because democracy is dying in this darkness that's not in the Washington Post. Well, what has happened is people are leaving his paper and they're leaving traditional media because they know they are not getting the truth. And so they are going to places where they can source real information, which is hearing directly from the candidates and the elected officials or whatever experts they want to hear. If they want to come to Citizens Podcast and hear from a national security expert, they can do it.
Mm.
If they want to go to a different podcast and hear from a real fitness expert, they can do it and not have the paper literally change the answer of what the candidate or somebody else said. It's just wild how much largely the left does not understand what is happening inside the mind of the public.
Well, usually what we see from creative destruction, and that's what this is, by the way, is it happens in the opposite direction, right? So things become either more co-located or monopolized, or it becomes a duopoly, oligopoly, or whatever, because one piece of tech will come along and it's a force multiplier, right? So I need less people to do it now, which means the person that actually owns the tech has quite a bit more power. Now we're going in the opposite direction. It's a diffusion of power. And I can't think of I'm trying to think of a time when that's happened before. I guess in a way when it's almost exclusive to communications. When new modalities of communication come out, it does tend to diffuse power from the upper levels quite a bit. Typically, like
Right.
the first thing I think of is like the Vulgate or Septuagint, like these versions of the New Testament that came out in different languages, and then obviously the King
Right.
James Bible that put it in English for the first time in 1511. That took power away from the Catholic Church, right?
Yep.
Because they were the only way you could get to God or understand anything at that point, and then it diffused over time. So maybe it is just common for communication modalities when there's creative destruction for it to diffuse more, which definitely not a bad thing.
No, it's going to be good for the actual spread of real information. Yes, it's going to mean there is more disinformation out there because there's just going to be more information out there. But what it also is going to mean is that the truth is actually going to be available to the public. Because, when you and I grew up, there was basically three sources of information: ABC, NBC, CBS. And then there were some people that actually got a paper delivered to their house. That was local news, but there weren't very many sources of information. So now there are, just an endless supply of information. So it's gonna be good for just democracy and truth filtering through at the end of the day. But yes, it's going to take people sorting through what's going to be a lot of misinformation or disinformation in the process.
Sure. Well, I mean, we got to figure out. I think this also ties in kind of with the, hard times create strong men theory, because you're going to have one of two choices. One is to completely tune out of everything, which that's not going to happen for the vast majority of people, because a lot of our social currency these days is wrapped up in being culturally aware or whatever the fuck, and that just happens to include politics now. So I don't think most people will just, as Timothy Leary said, to drop out, tune in, drop out, whatever. I think what's more likely is people are going to have to learn I guess even in this branch, there's a divide. You're either going to have to become extremely partisan and cognitively dissonant of any kind of new information, or you're going to have to become pretty good at sorting out what is real and what is not real, which, the latter is obviously a benefit. But the former kind of leads itself to sectarian violence, to be honest. We've seen this in countries all over the world.
For sure.
So kind of hoping that, because I'm sure everybody out there has been in an argument where the two people just don't agree on the facts, and it can only escalate. It can only you either have to stop talking to that person, or it can only escalate from there. And when you're talking about millions of people at a time, then it becomes a fucking problem.
Big time. And that's there is a breaking of the truth in America right now, and that's one of the things that I hope we see as an outcome of this election, is just a return to things that we all know to be true. Riley Gaines is posting this morning about the boxer from Algeria who won the gold medal in women's boxing. That guy a report came out from a hospital in France, like the guy has the XY chromosome. And so it's just there's a hope that we can return to a normalcy of truth after this election.
Yeah, but he was raised as a girl, so that negates your bone density and muscle mass. I don't know if you knew that.
Well, it certainly does when you're in the boxing ring.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've our collective epistemology has been butt fucked about as hard as it can, and I don't know, like, certainly it was on purpose, but I don't know. It would be really interesting to have someone study the timeline of all this stuff happening, because since Trump took office, or since he started running for office, like, there was a lot of politicians always lie. That's their job, right? They're full of shit.
For sure.
But it's been different with Trump in a way, and people that don't agree with that, because I'm not a huge Trump guy. I don't care about politicians at all. I just care about what the fuck you do with your job, you know. And obviously the Constitution, but it's been markedly different with Trump. And I'm just thinking about since 2015 when he started running for office, some of the lies that have been told that are demonstrably untrue, right? And not only lies that have been told, but have been reinforced by first the media and then all their little puppets out in the wilderness there, like the very fine people. Trump calling Nazis fine people.
Oh yeah.
Russia collusion. Biden as sharp as a tack. Remember that one? That was a nice one.
Oh, you could keep going. There's a list of 1,000 of those anecdotes.
Yeah, like the Kamala was never the border czar. If you get the vax, you won't catch COVID. Even this last week, Trump saying that Liz Cheney should be shot. Like, no, sorry.
Yeah.
He was basically just and eloquently quoting "Fortunate Son," which is a song that you all were singing just a couple of years ago. There's like 30 major lies that have been told, and it's a problem that people are just willing to accept them because they don't like the guy. You know what I mean? And this is something I tell people all the time. Whether it doesn't matter which political side you're on, you should be extremely skeptical when you hear something that sounds good, right? More so than when it sounds bad. So our brain these days has been programmed to be like, oh, that sounds negative towards something I like, so I'm going to dismiss that. And then the inverse of that is true, but that's not how reality works. You know what I mean? Like, you have to sort out the individual thing on its own.
Absolutely. And you're familiar with some of the work that we were doing this year in this election cycle with Vote for America, where we were trying to take largely exactly to your point. Our whole purpose was we recognized that there were tens of millions of gun owners, hunters, Second Amendment supporters, agricultural farmer and ranchers who fundamentally kind of viewed the world through a lens where they wanted less government intervention in their lives, just wanted to be left alone, didn't feel like this government was working on their behalf. And so we were working to use the people that they trust to tell them why they need to vote. Because going back to your point, everybody thinks politicians lie to them. There was a study that came out 3 weeks ago, I believe, from Axios, which is more of a political paper, but it's a national paper. And they asked the public who is most responsible for misinformation. So they went through, online personalities, media personalities, all these different branches of sources of disinformation. The place that the public blamed most for disinformation was candidates for office. So it's just hilarious that both parties, Republican and Democrats, use candidates for office, which is one of the least trusted sources of information, to mobilize their electorate to go out and vote. It's like, well, nobody trusts these people. Why don't you use a different mechanism to mobilize voters? And so that is one of the big systematic things we were working to correct through Vote for America. Is we wanted to take trusted sources of information and talk to those audiences about why this election matters to them and attempt to mobilize these low propensity and unregistered voters. And it was wildly effective.
Yeah. What do you think? Why do you think it is that 10.3 million or so registered hunters were not even registered to vote?
Yeah, so we did, as a part of this Vote for America work, we did a survey of them early in the cycle to really understand their mindset around why they weren't doing it. And there were three things that kind of came up. One is one vote doesn't matter. And as you know, as just an astute observer, but also just using a very cultural context and social media context, Brandon Herrera lost his primary by 407 votes. And there's any number of reasons that 407 people didn't turn out. There was a big storm that came through West Texas that day. There's all kinds of different dynamics. But that's one thing. That's one of the three things that comes up is one vote doesn't make a difference. Another thing that comes up is one voting isn't going to make an impact. Why would I take my time to go vote when nothing changes? The other thing that is a big factor is people don't connect their personal anxieties to decisions being made by elected officials. So, for example, there's lots of people who are anxious about crime in their neighborhoods, and they don't connect crime to activities like defund the police. Well, defund the police was pushed by and decisions made by elected officials from the local level to the federal level. People have anxiety about the border. The border is 1,000% an issue that is decided by elected officials. And so they don't connect that me voting and changing the elected officials can actually make an impact on those things that are causing me anxieties. And so, that's what we spent a lot of time doing was helping people connect. Like, no, you are the solution to your own problem if you will just vote. You're concerned about this, go vote, change the person that's making the decisions that are causing you anxiety. So that's a big part of the psychology of it.
What do you think it is with veterans? Because active duty, about 75% of people vote. And then once they become veterans, it's 33%. That's a wild number to me.
It is a wild number. We have not done a study on it. I have a huge amount of respect for our veterans, and so I don't even want to begin to presume why these guys who literally put their life on the line for other people to do that thing, then come home and don't do it. I fully recognize that it's a fact, but man, I want to be shy about presuming on why they're doing that.
Well, I mean, I would assume it's probably a lot of the same bullshit, to be honest. Although you add to that some level of disaffection with government, right? I mean, I don't know a whole lot of veterans who are fans of the government, frankly.
No.
I mean, personally, I don't think the federal government should even exist. It's a complete waste of fucking time. I think the federal government should be like 12 dudes that are all CPAs, right? Like that's
exactly.
it. They just manage books, and then that's it. Yeah, that's good though to challenge some of these assumptions that people hold internally, because it could be difficult to do that. A lot of people kind of get locked in these single voter or single issue voters or straight ticket voters and stuff like that. I don't think that's doing anybody any good, to be honest.
No, totally. And a new dynamic that I saw popping up at some point in this election was that this government just isn't working for the people anymore. And there's no more glaring example of that than Western North Carolina. Something I know that, is near and dear to you. I spent a lot of my summers up in those mountains, and near and dear to me, I took some family down, and we went and did a few days of recovery in Western North Carolina about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was about a week and a half after the storm. We all saw the stories of FEMA's not here. Where's the Army? What drove me crazy was, as you're an 82nd guy, right? Mm-hmm. So the 82nd is just on the other side of those mountains.
Yeah.
I don't care what role the military is supposed to play. There was equipment just on the other side of the mountains that, whether it's the military's job or not, there are American citizens dying on the sides of those mountains. Fly the birds.
Yeah.
Well, the button hadn't been pushed. Fly the birds. Like, well, that's not the role of the military. Fly the birds. Like, why is it a thing that we're even asking if all the right minutia has happened for the birds to get up and go save American citizens? Like, if the government is working for the people, you don't ask the question. You just do the right thing. Mm. And it's little things like that really crystallized for me this idea that I began seeing in the electorate, that the government just isn't working for the people anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think this idea that and this isn't about overthrowing the government or anything like that, but the idea in the Declaration of Independence, where government has a specific purpose. And when it stops functioning in that purpose, it's time to throw it off and start over. It's not just about authoritarianism. It's also about bureaucracy, right?
Right.
Like it's, and that's, feudalist Europe, serfdom in Europe, wasn't just marked by violence, right? It was mostly about pay to play. It was a bureaucracy where you had to pay to play, and you paid with your labor mostly back then. Now you pay mostly with a combination of your labor and your money, but it's effectively the same thing. If these institutions that we've built and funded to do certain jobs or protect us or whatever the bottom line is, stop functioning that way because of the bureaucracy, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious what needs to happen there. You know what I mean? We need to fire 95% of the government. There's no reason that the largest employer in this fucking country should be the government.
Yeah, and that has been portrayed in some of the labor statistic as well. I don't remember exactly what the numbers are, but a massive amount of the job growth that has happened in the last year has been inside the federal government. I worked for Vivek Ramaswamy in his primary of this year, and he was very clear about the fact that he wanted to significantly reduce the payroll of the government, and that's exactly right. Like, no, I'm clearly not here saying we need to end the federal government, but it's little examples like what happened in Western North Carolina, exactly that. Like, why is it a bureaucratic thing? Like, why can't we just get the birds up? Like, this doesn't make sense that we would have to have all this different red tape and minutia just to go save American lives. Like, it's been amazing, and we all saw the stories of just the private citizens who had helicopters and did their thing just to go help people. And you would think that the government would be able to do the same thing, but we've gotten to the place where it has just become so bureaucratic that it can't move and meet the needs of the people. And so, yeah, there just needs to be some structural reform, and it probably does start with a massive reduction in headcount.
Yeah, I mean, just the word privatization rubs a lot of people the wrong way for some reason. I don't really understand why. I don't know that they understand that the bulk of the non-logistical work that gets done for the government is done by contractors and not by direct employees. Direct employees of the federal government are either enforcement people or they're doing fucking logistics or something, right? They're not. There are no government employees who pave roads. That's not a thing.
Right.
And it wouldn't be out of the question or even very difficult, frankly, to take, just since we're talking about emergency response, and I'm a bit of an expert in this, so
I'm not. I was just telling you what I saw.
Yeah. Well, I am. I only need to take a test to become a certified emergency manager, and there's only 1,500 of those in the world.
Oh, no way.
To have a private company or a nonprofit or something like that get certified on ICS, Incident Command System, which means you know where you plug in and what your responsibilities are, what the requirements are, federally, state, whatever, is super easy, frankly, right? And doesn't require a bunch of full-time government employees. That's the problem. We have 2 or 3 emergencies a year maybe that require that kind of stuff, and you keep a full-time $150,000 employee on to service one part of that for the entire year, even though they're only working for maybe a couple of months. That is, man, I mean, you would never do that at your fucking business. You know what I mean?
Right.
You don't, most companies don't keep a tax guy on all year. You have a tax attorney and you fucking throw your stuff to him at the end of the year or in April or quarterly or whatever you do it. But only when necessary. And that person is an outside contractor, not a direct employee. That would be very foolish of you to carry an expense for the entire year that only applies for a certain period of the year. That is dumb. And if you wouldn't run a private business that way, you should not run a government that way.
No, that's exactly right.
And on that note, this the response to this stuff is always, as you said, you mentioned bureaucracy, red tape, whatever. I mean, just think you have to check in with somebody every single move you make. And aside from that, intrinsically just slowing down the process, there's also contact switching, which is anybody that's worked in business before knows about this, but contact switching means that if I'm in progress on a thing, whether it's typing up a report or digging a hole or whatever the fuck it is, anything that requires any kind of mental effort, If I get interrupted, it takes me about 15 minutes to get back into the rhythm I was in before. Now, when you're on the phone for 4 hours in a day trying to get the right federal people on the phone so you can get authorization to do something, how many people suffered during that 4-hour period? That is unacceptable, right?
Exactly.
I just don't understand why we've fallen into this trap so much. So when you think about privatization, think of it that way. Like somebody who's an actual expert and not a fucking government drone leech is going to show up and help you when you need help, right? That's the difference.
For sure.
Anyway,
I will tell you though, I saw the best of humanity in Western North Carolina. It was truly amazing. A buddy of mine sent me a video while we were down in the mountains of South Carolina, and it was a video from up in I think it was the Newland area. And it was a guy who said, "Man, we've got plenty of water, we got plenty of diapers, we got lots of supplies, but what nobody's bringing up here is a cold beer and a hug. We need a cold beer and a hug." And so I looked at my boy who was with me, and I said, "On our way home, that's exactly what we're going to do." And we loaded up a cooler full of, it was actually ended up getting Jack and Cokes and some Mountain Dews. And we just drove back up through the worst hit areas, and everybody we could see, if somebody just working on the side of the road, we pull over. "Hey man, you need a Mountain Dew? You need a Jack and Coke?" "Yes, yes, I do." There was not one person who turned us down. There was not one person who was confused about why I pulled over on the side of the road and asked them if they needed a drink. They were just thankful that I did it. And it wasn't Republican, it wasn't Democrat, it had nothing to do with color or race or religion or anything else. It was just pure, raw, good humanity, man. And it was so nice to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people this all the time. The American citizen is the most generous, charitable group in human history. And you can track this back as long as you want, but the first time I really remember it was the tsunamis in Indonesia and all that shit. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be writing about emergency management stuff at the time, and I was looking into the amount of money that private citizens in the U.S. donated to that. I'm like, they don't know any of these fucking people. No. And then Haiti happens, same thing. And then anytime anything happens domestically, obviously we're all on top of that as well. That's a good thing, and it speaks to the point of this show that you can either bitch and moan about your rights and wait around for somebody to secure them for you, and you'll be a subject under their rule, or you can secure them yourself by performing the responsibilities required of you to be a citizen. And that's the real difference, man. If you hate, don't just fucking bitch on Twitter about how you hate the government, because you've done nothing. Right? You may feel good about espousing your fucking political ideology and whatever. You got it out off your chest. But you haven't actually done anything. You haven't done anything yet. Right. But when the federal government shows up to a state or a town or whatever, and nobody's got their hand out, well, they don't have any power there, right? So if you solve problems in your local communities before the government gets there, that's the way you decrease the size of government. That's the most effective way.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we were seeing there. I mean, there was one place up in Burnsville, North Carolina, where we went. There were 60-some people at a camp up on the side of a mountain. The road down had a creek running beside it. The creek obviously washed out the entirety of that road. And within 3 or 4 days after the storm, people with their own equipment had already put that road back. I mean, obviously not paved, but you could at least get a four-wheeler and things up and down the road, and you could get the people out of the camp. Like, it was wild. Just watching the American spirit come to life in situations like that is very encouraging for the future of this country.
Yeah, I agree. And it's, you got to get people to understand the stakes. One of the things I don't like is this, and it's been a talking point a little bit in this election, that all you got to do is show up every 2 or 4 years and actually vote, and things will be okay. It's like, well, I mean, certainly you should show up every 2 and 4 years to vote, but that's not nearly enough. No, that's not like you. I mean, we're all trying to get Trump elected here because we know he can do a good job, because there's evidence of that, and he's also not a fucking retard. But he fucked up shit too, right? On COVID, he fucked that up as bad as you could fuck it up, in my opinion.
Everybody makes
Yeah,
mistakes.
and so it's like it is your job as a Republican that supports this man, just like it's your job if it was your fucking kid or your brother or your parent or whatever, to be like, hey, you're fucked up. You got to knock that off, right? It doesn't mean you hate
Right.
them or you're not loyal or you don't support them. No,
Absolutely.
you should be loyal to the Constitution and nothing further as far as politics goes. So I just think I hate that talking point because the response, just like I tell veterans this all the time, just because you took the uniform off doesn't mean your service ended. Like, you're a leader.
Yeah.
You need to fucking act like it. And that's true for all men all the time. You're a fucking leader no matter where you go. You have to choose to be and act accordingly. Otherwise, look at we're in an unled country right now. Is this what you want? Really? Like, we don't have
That's
a
a really good
president.
way to put it. I mean, we literally have a president who, I mean, we don't know if he's there making decisions. We don't know who is making decisions inside the White House. We have no reason to presume that the president himself is actually the one making decisions. And, part of what is frustrating Republican and Democrat is that nobody's asking any questions why. There's nobody saying, well, this is a problem. Shouldn't we fix this? And it's just like, God, we literally don't have a president. Like, why should we accept the fact that we're not going to have a president for 6 months? Which is basically what happened. He he removed himself from the ballot in
Wow.
July
Hmm.
and has all but disappeared since then. And so, Republican, Democrat aside, like, why aren't Republicans asking why we don't have a president? Why aren't Democrats asking why don't we have a president right now? Like, it's a wild situation. I hadn't thought about it that way. But that's a really good way to put it. It's just an unled country at the moment.
Well, what do you think about that? Why isn't anyone saying anything? It's not like if I was an elected Republican, I wouldn't talk about anything else. I would be demanding who's running the fucking country right now, because it's not this dude who's on the beach fucking getting ice cream on his nose, man. It's not
No.
him. So who the fuck is it? I mean, we know who it is. It's the 10,000 bureaucratic assholes in D.C. who run everything. But like, to get somebody to admit that.
Well, I can tell you exactly why nobody is bringing this up. And it's because elected officials respond to the electorate. That's the one thing that they do respond to. Congress gets lots of criticism for not doing this or not doing that. But if you want Congress to respond to something, the electorate needs to talk about it. Americans aren't talking about it.
I mean, they are just not. I don't know. There's such, like, people that follow politics and people who get their news on Facebook there's such an information gap
Oh,
there
big time.
that it can be difficult to really communicate with those folks. I mean, you see it, a good way to see it, and this isn't the only way, by the way, but a good way to see it is just to watch the Charlie Kirk campus tours and stuff like that. And Vivek was on a bunch of those over the summer.
Yeah, I saw he had done a
he
tour
did
with him
He
recently.
did a really good job. But all of this stuff that people believe that is demonstrably untrue. That is one of the primary, like on abortion, for example, that people are dying because of ectopic pregnancies. That's not true. It's 100% not true. And on the other side, that some states don't have abortion all the way up until the point of birth, which is 7 states definitely have that. It's on their books. You can look it up right now. But
Oh, yeah.
you say that to somebody, and they're like, "Oh no, that's just right wing propaganda." It's like, no, here's the bill. You can read it. It says it right here. Like, no,
Yeah, exactly.
like, no, that's not right. I'm like, what the fuck? There's nothing more dangerous than a midwit. A midwit is somebody who knows just enough to be dangerous, right? Like, they've got the
Right.
talking point, and because there's no foundation under that talking point, all they can do is yell it louder and louder, right?
Right.
Which, unfortunately, to people who don't pay any attention at all, that can be very effective, to just hear it repetitively.
Yeah. I'm in an interesting place as well, just in that personally, I feel like America would be a much better place if people paid less attention to politics. People pay so much attention to politics and they feel so personally about it. Like, that's a lot of what has created the anxiety and created the polarization that we've watched really over the last 15 years or so. But conversely to what I just said, now we're in a situation where we are an unled country. And the reason we're an unled country is because people don't pay enough attention to politics. They would much rather go entertain themselves to death. And so then we end up in a situation where we don't know who's literally running the country and nobody is demanding it because they don't want to take the time away from whatever it is that's entertaining them at the moment to deal with it. So I don't know what the answer is either.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, the answer is federalism, Stephen. I mean, we shouldn't be too wrapped up in federal politics, frankly. We should be worried much
Yeah,
more about our local politics, but we
100%.
have to care about federal politics now because they've amassed most of the power. And that's, as a result of people falling asleep at the wheel, to be honest, but it doesn't really matter how it happened at this point. It's just that it did.
It did for sure.
And even then, we're not going far enough because for every bill that Congress passes, unelected bureaucrats add 16 new regulations that have passed no muster. I mean, they're open for constitutional challenge in the courts, but most of the time people don't even know that they're there until they get fucked down the road by them somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
16 to 1. That's the ratio of bureaucratic regulation to actual voted on fucking bills, laws in this country. So, when I think when people on the right hear the phrase "drain the swamp," I think a lot of them think of Pelosi and Schumer and Mitch
Right.
McConnell and people like that, like old school politicians on either side that have just been there too long. But the real swamp that needs to be drained are people like Ron Klain. Like he's got to go forever. That guy can never work in government again. Or Garland or Jack Smith or any of these assholes who have amassed bureaucratic power after having never been voted for anything in their fucking lives. You know what I mean? Like that's the
Yeah.
swamp that needs to get drained. And frankly, the president can do that pretty quickly. He can just start firing people. You know what I mean? That is well within his purview to do that. So I'm really hoping that Trump takes it a little bit more seriously this time.
He said he is. It seems to have been a very serious part of his platform this time. So I would expect him to do that, but we won't know until we actually see who wins the election and until that person then gets into the White House and starts doing whatever it is they're going to do. So we'll just have to wait and see if that does transpire. But it seems to be a big part of what they've been planning.
Well, what do you think about the election then? Since we're getting into it now, it's it's tomorrow. Do you think we're going to have a winner tomorrow?
So I make my living on on attempting to be right about these things. I try not to be partisan about them, meaning when I'm advising any number of people, I want them to have the best information to understand what potential risks exist for them. And so the best information that I have been giving, regardless of who I would personally like to win the election, is the environment for this election was set 2 years ago. And kind of coming back to some of the conversations we've had earlier, the issues dominating the psyche of the public are all issues that lean in Republicans' favor. So when you think about what's setting an environment, there are a lot of people who are very concerned about the border. And Kamala was the border czar, undisputedly. The the Biden-Harris administration sued the state of Texas to take down border security measures that they had put up. That is not setting a good environment for Democrats this election. People are legitimately concerned about crime. We've seen, massive numbers of new gun owners who have bought guns for the first time since COVID. That's happening because they're concerned about crime. They're concerned about crime because of policies that have been put in place by Democrats. Uh, we could just keep going down the list. There's lots and lots of people who are concerned about men showing up in women's restrooms or playing in women's sports. The only issue that is environmentally setting a stage for Democrats is abortion. And it's a potent issue. I just don't see this environment being an environment where Democrats are going to have a good election night. And so, everything that I see in the environment says that we're going to know a winner. We're going to know it soon. That's going to be Donald Trump. Will we know election night? I don't know, but I could definitely see it by Wednesday, Thursday.
So for the first time in human history in these last two elections, we don't have a winner on the night of. There are third world countries who are able to do this, and somehow we can't. I don't understand.
It's very true.
How could that possibly be the case?
I mean, again, just I am not a partisan hack, and that my job is not to elect Republicans or Democrats. But it is astounding to me that we can't get agreement around things like voter ID for showing up and voting on election day. That just seems like a very simple, clean, clear thing. Same thing for ensuring that illegal aliens are not voting in our elections. I mean, we literally had, again, the Biden-Harris administration sue the state of Virginia to put people who were self-professed as not a legal voter to get them back in the voter rolls. It's just like this is getting beyond the pale. So that's just wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, then again, I thought we would have been able to agree on not mutilating children or
you would think
not indoctrinating them, and it's not doing us any favors, to be honest. I don't think that Chris Cuomo on News Nation the other day was saying, just talking about why people support Trump and what some of the leftist misinterpretations of that are. He's like, everybody that supports Trump doesn't think and talk like him. You know what I mean? They're not
right.
Like that's not what that is. It's not like it's not a cult or anything like that. It's just like, oh, this guy is kind of a dick, but he's being a dick to the people that we hate, so we're fine with that. And by the way, I don't just mean to people in Washington. I mean fucking Putin and Kim Jong-un and fucking Xi Jinping and people like and the Shah of Iran, or the Ayatollah. Right. It's like, Ayatollah. Yeah, he's a dick to people that we don't like, one, and two, it's been effective when he's been a dick to people. So we're fine with that. And then it's not surprising for people that a guy who's a dick to those people is sometimes a dick to other people. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't care. Like when anybody that's played football especially will know this to be true. There are different personalities in your coaching group. One guy's the pat on the back guy. One's the get in your ass guy. One's the disappointed father guy. Like often the head coach is just gives you that look like, with that, like, I'm very disappointed in what your performance there. But it's all about getting the right coalition together that can manage the broadest style of personalities under them, right? So you need a guy like Ramaswamy who is perpetually upbeat. He is the most positive human being I've ever met in my life, for real. Anything you say to him, anything you can say to him, he can fucking spin it positively. And I don't mean like in a fake way. Like he was like, well, think about it this way, and then here's and then turn a challenge into something that you can actually perform on. And then Trump's a little bit of a shit talker, obviously. I think you need all those personalities. And then of course, you could say this about Vance or Ramaswamy, but they're both policy wonks to a large degree as well.
Very smart human beings.
You need all these little pieces, right? So when somebody says, when somebody says, "Oh, I'm not going to vote for Trump because I don't like his personality," that's fucking stupid, to be honest, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. And on inverse of that, not all Democrats are Marxists. That's just not true, right?
Correct. Absolutely.
But we're in a position now where all the indicators are there. So the misery index used to be the best predictor of an election outcome for as long as the inflation numbers and unemployment numbers have been tracked. The last two elections, it has not been that, right? And
I mean, CNN ran a piece and admitted, this might have been on Friday or Saturday, it had to be Friday, that 75% of the electorate agrees that the country's on the wrong track. And they even admitted it will be unprecedented for an incumbent party to be reelected with numbers like this.
It's never happened before.
No.
As a matter of fact, only 4 sitting vice presidents have ever won I think the first two, Adams and Jefferson, then Grover Cleveland, I believe, and H.W. Bush. Those are the only four ever to do that. So it's extremely rare, even under, and look, those were pretty remarkable situations. I mean, Washington effectively handed the torch to Adams, so you couldn't say anything about that. Adams had not a great presidency, and also he got railroaded by Alexander Hamilton to hand that election off to Jefferson. So I guess you can't really that's kind of not a great analog. I don't know much about Grover Cleveland, but HW inherited winning the Cold War essentially, right? So, or at least on track to win the Cold War. So that'll fucking get you elected. As a matter of fact, HW would have won in '92 as well if Ross Perot would have stayed home, frankly. But
yeah, Ross Perot and read my lips, no new taxes.
Yeah, that wasn't great.
And then he raised taxes. I didn't know.
Yeah. Reagan said the same thing, and then he raised taxes 5 out of the 8 years he was in office. He never gets any heat for that for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, it's like it's getting harder. I'm not a conservative. I don't conserve. I'm not trying to conserve anything. I'm a libertarian. I think that the Constitution is the law of the land, and that's the way we should behave. But I guess you could call that right wing to some degree, and it's becoming more and more difficult to relate to the left because it's now 24% currency inflation, 54% energy, 26% food. These are all very obvious numbers, right? Like there's no way that you should be able to get reelected and do this again. 10 plus million people illegally in the country. And my understanding of exit polling and the crosstabs on a lot of these polls is if Trump loses, it'll be because 60 to 65% of women and 40% of men want their daughters to be able to murder their grandchildren. Like that's it. It's just for some reason the effigy for this women's plight is all wrapped up in just the ability to have an abortion. I don't understand because very few people even participate in this stuff. As a matter of fact, it's mostly minority women, which is interesting. And in addition to that, that's like the least of your rights as a like there's no other barricade to you in American life anymore as a woman. Aside from that, some people are touchy about the idea of killing babies, and it's been adjudicated at this point. The 9th and 10th Amendments of the Constitution demand to be adjudicated at the states. You are well within your rights to take it to a ballot in your state. And by the way, every state that's done that, the pro-abortion crowd has won. Every single state, including Iowa, for fuck's sake, right? Even Iowa.
Surprising.
So it's like the fact that to me isn't really... It's not a partisan issue. It just means to me that these people are fucking stupid. Like they're stupid enough to believe all the shit that people say about Trump. They hate him that much. That's really all it is.
Yeah, I mean, the Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing, but we're also just watching a very strange political realignment. And they're hard to see and hard to understand when you're inside them. And so we won't really know the effects of this for a long time. But, I can personally relate to going back and watching Bill Clinton's speeches from 1992, and I'm like, man, I'd vote for that guy. Like, it's amazing how the parties have shifted and how the parties have changed and how Republican politics has become much more populist and anti-corporate. And you have the Democrats who have kind of taken over the money machine. They're the ones raising the big dollars now, not Republicans. It's a wild realignment that we're inside of right now.
What do you think is going to be the result of that? I mean, I think the TDS stuff is well, let me rephrase this. I hear from a lot of people that if I don't know, DeSantis or somebody like that was the candidate, that they would be up by 5 or 8 points nationally. I don't know if I believe that or not. I mean, because none of this, Trump made it easy for the left to lie about him because he goes off the cuff and talks a lot of shit. But they would have done it either way. I mean, this was a calculated plan.
It didn't matter who it was. They were going to hate him. I talked to a lot of people who, when they picked J.D. Vance, they're like, oh, this guy's horrible. Look at what they're saying about him. I'm like, just wait a minute. They were going to say this about anybody. Let them get through it. It'll be all right. And so, yes, it didn't matter who the candidate was, they were going to shoot at him like this. The other side of it is, yeah, you might pick up more independent and swing votes if you had a Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or really anybody but Donald Trump. But I mean, the number one rule in politics is you have to turn out your people. And there is nobody who turns out the base like Donald Trump. And so, where does the math shake out on that? Once the Plinko ball comes all the way to the bottom, I don't really know. Because yes, you would have an easier time with the soccer moms, the suburban moms, the independent voters, swing voters, but you would have a much more difficult time with the base because Trump has this. The base really feels like that Trump defends them in a way that no one else does. And that's why he sailed through the primary the way he did. He didn't even participate in the debates because he didn't need to. And it's because the primary electorate truly believes that this guy is fighting for them.
Don't you think that's
And
crazy
nobody,
that the right has felt bullied for some time, and then they elect a bully to go fight back for them, and everybody's like, "Oh, he's a bully." I mean, it reminds me of my little sister when I was growing up. She would like pick a fight with me, and when I reacted, she would run and tell my mom.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
we all been there.
Like, what the fuck? But these are adults. These are adults.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mother of God.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to be at the end of the day the most important, I guess, issue in this election for people? Because I think that, and we know this to be true historically. This has happened in cultures way older than ours, ones that don't even exist anymore. But all of the special interest stuff seems to melt away when people can't eat. People get a lot more practical and pragmatic when food is scarce, right? They make friends with people they wouldn't normally. They forget about being offended and shit, and they just want to eat. And I feel like we're probably in that spot right now. If not, then I don't know what the fuck. I mean, maybe we just need a famine or some shit. I don't know.
Yeah, food security is a real thing. The affordability of food is a real thing. Inflation is certainly driving probably a third of the electorate. Maybe it was probably the more dominant issue. Is it? I don't know that there's going to be one issue that really mobilizes the electorate more than any other. Because, like I said, what we're seeing is just a lot of anxiety inside the electorate, but the anxiety is there it's different for a lot of different people, but it kind of comes down to three or four or five different issues. Like I said, it's the crime, it's border, it's pissed off that illegal immigrants can come across the border and get a free hotel room with a credit card and free food, and people are looking at it like, well, I don't get that, and that's my money. So there's a lot of different issues that are moving through the electorate at the moment. I don't know that there's going to be one that is going to drive the outcome of the election.
And then what are the other? Everybody's focused on the top level right now, but obviously the down ballot elections really matter. It looks like the Republicans are going to take the Senate pretty easily. It won't be a wide margin, but it does look like they've got that pretty wrapped up. I don't know about the House, though. It doesn't look like they're going to take the House.
So if you want to break down the races, I mean, this might age really poorly, but I hope not.
Well, it can only age for one day, so.
Yeah, exactly. I expect Republicans to win West Virginia. I expect, in terms of the margin of victory, I expect it to be West Virginia. I expect the margin of victory in Ohio to be wider than the margin of victory in Montana.
Montana's probably like 51, 48 or something, 49 maybe, something like that. I think it's closer than some of the polling. There's no way it's that far apart. Tester's been around too long.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's a lot of people who are like, Montana's in the bag. That's the next race to come. That's the race that's going to bring the Republicans the majority. I think that race is going to come. I for some reason, well, I mean, not for some reason, it's kind of what I know and see in Ohio. I think there's going to be a wider margin of victory in Ohio than in Montana. So we'll get Ohio, we'll get Montana. And then I really believe that McCormick is going to win in Pennsylvania as well. So that's 52 seats, 53 seats.
Yeah.
for Republicans. And then the question is, what's going to happen in Minnesota and or Michigan and Wisconsin? I actually believe those states will break together and the Senate seat will follow the presidency. So I think either Harris or Trump is going to win both of those states, not one or the other. And I think the Republican or the Democratic Senate candidate will follow the presidency. So I don't actually think 54 is a very likely outcome for
I
Republicans
agree with that.
because I think they're going to break together. So if Trump wins by 3 points in both of those states, there's a chance that we get two Republican senators out of Michigan and Wisconsin. So that puts you at 55 and not 54. So that's just some weird inside math on like how those seats work. I could end up being wrong, but that's just kind of what I see happening.
Yeah, I mean that seems like probably a bit of a stretch on that one, but you never know, man. I mean, polling is fucking pointless. I don't know. You know what? No one ever does. Somebody should start a real nonpartisan nonprofit that compares polls to the outcome every single election cycle, because I know that some people do it in certain ways, but I've never seen any deep look, because I used to run some of these polls. I've never you can make the outcome say whatever the fuck you want always. That is 100% accurate, that you can always make it say whatever you want. But the ones that are actually trying to do a good job will often look at the methodology, but then who they talk to over what period of time, all this stuff. I mean, I haven't seen any really good analyses of these after elections, to be honest. And I think it's because, the pollsters have no reason to do it for themselves, right?
Yep.
Unless they know for a fact they got everything right, because any aberration from correct is going to make them look like they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of aberrations in there. People miss by very wide margins a lot, and somehow they keep getting employed. But I use polling to understand what is. I mostly use polling to understand why a group of people think the way they do. I do not put a lot of stock in tracking polls. Like 56% of the people are going to vote here. They're 70% of the people believe this, because it's all about the inputs, and we don't know. So sure, you know, I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but let's say, 60% of women are going to support Kamala Harris. Okay, great. But we don't know how many women are going to show up. And so it's all about your inputs into the poll, and that dictates the outcomes of the poll. And so that's where these polls get it wrong, is they're like, all right, well, we could look at this silo and this demographic and splice the data this way. And this percentage of the people support Trump, this percentage of the people support Kamala Harris. But at the end of the day, it cannot tell you how many of those people are going to turn out to the polls. And so if men outperform versus women, Donald Trump gets elected. If gun owners outperform versus gun controllers, Trump gets elected. If veterans outperform versus some other demographic, like it's all about turnout.
Well, that's a good place to end. Then go fucking vote if you haven't already, jackass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't be an idiot. Don't be that guy. Just vote.
No, that's it. I mean, and especially coming from people like you who have served, we appreciate you saying that. It's all about getting people out to vote. So absolutely, get out, vote, and drag your friends with you.
Yep, 100%. Well, look, thanks for coming today. Tell everybody where they can find you if they want to follow some of your work or whatever organizations you're running with.
Yeah, so Vote for America is the organization where we were just trying to speak to the electorate through the people that they trusted on social media. So Vote for America is where we were trying to organize 2A and veterans and a bunch of different influencers just to talk to like I said, talk to their audience about the need to vote. My company is Perspective Strategies, and another company is 527 Tracker, where we track all of the super PAC data in real time. So that's a place where if you want to see the amount of spend and where it's getting spent in real time, you can go there. And as of this morning, I did not expect it to get this high. Since September 1st, we've spent $2.9 billion in super PAC spending.
Good Lord.
2 months, $3 billion.
That doesn't seem like a good thing at all to me.
It's probably not. Just for context, and we'll wrap this thing up in 2022, September 1st to election day was 1.4 billion. Sorry, that's not right. It was $2.3 billion, I believe is right. But we didn't have the presidential. And so now we've tacked the presidential on, and we're knocking on $3 billion in 2 months.
Great. Well, thanks, Citizens United, for that. Thank you, Mitt Romney, because corporations are people, my friend. Yeah. All right, cool. Well, look, there's nothing you can do about any of that bullshit. All you can do is vote. So
that's it.
Go.
If people don't like Citizens United, or if they do like Citizens United, vote. If you're pissed off about regulation that's affecting your farm, there's one thing you can do about it. You can vote. If you're pissed off about the fact that if you're pissed off about arm braces, or you're pissed off about there's not enough solar farms, that's why voting is so powerful. The one thing you can do is put people in office who agree with you. So go vote.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then grab one of your fucking dumb buddies.
Grab your knucklehead buddies
seriously,
and take them with you.
Use today to reach out to people you think may not have voted yet, and say, hey, did you go vote yet? And if they didn't, take tomorrow off and drag that fuck face to the polls and make them vote. There's no excuse for this bullshit. Well, look, thanks for coming today. I appreciate the conversation.
Appreciate you, Dan. Pleasure.
Yeah, tomorrow will be a good time. We're doing a live election show at WTF Ice House downtown on West 6th Street, starting at 7 p.m. We're going to get fucking wrecked all night. We've got Christina Bobb, Trump's election integrity attorney there. It'll be a fun time, so come out and join us. And again, thank you for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Dan. Pleasure.
Yeah, man. Thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.